Three board members of the Journal of Zimbabwe that is here. I was trying to remember what year it was. It was a long time ago. Myself and Joanne McGregor ran a publication workshop here at UZ. And Jason has actually just launched a program which Gerald is going to talk more about, a kind of mentoring program for academics in the region. So I'll leave that to him to explain in more detail. But what I wanted to do is just briefly kind of unpack a bit the process of publishing in a journal. I'm going to talk through how JSAS works, because it's a bit of an oddity, in fact, in the world of journals. It's like a strange cooperative of some kind. So I'll kind of underline what's different about it as a journal, and then maybe talk about how other journals tend to work. So when you come to think about publishing, the first question you have to ask yourself is, where should you publish? Which is the appropriate journal for you? And how do you go about deciding that? Obviously, I mean, you've mentioned a number of journals already, but if you're writing more about politics, you might think of African Affairs. If you're writing more about history, you might think of the Journal of African History. If you're writing more ethnographically, engaging with debates in anthropology, you might think of Africa. And then the journals like the Journal of Zimbabwe still have particular characters. And JSAS tends to be quite empirically oriented and a bit historically oriented. Though we've been trying to publish more widely, bringing in, for example, work on literature of late. So what you need to do is really read these journals and see what they're publishing. Read the last few issues. See what kind of work they're engaging with. And the other way to think about it is, who are you citing in your work? Where are the people you're citing and publishing? So you want to be publishing in the place you're having a conversation with. So that should follow kind of organically from your own work. Don't try and write something for a journal. Find the journal that suits your writing, because it's very hard to do it the other way around. It doesn't tend to work. It doesn't tend to be sort of convincing. Yeah, so you want to join the community that you're part of, and you want to go out there and find that community there. So that's the kind of first step, is identifying the relevant journal for your own work. The second step is maybe a bit of an obvious one, but all journals have very specific requirements as regards style and length, and how you cite things, and all that kind of stuff. So if you send in a paper that's much too long, to JSAS, for example, it'll simply be sent back to you. So don't waste your time by making that kind of just submitting something that doesn't fit the criteria. And then you'll also see that in JSAS that it doesn't have, for example, work that is narrowly policy oriented, or that takes the form of a kind of consultancy report, something like that. If you submit that, that's also likely to be returned to you without having been read, because it's simply not the kind of thing that the journal publishes. Yeah, okay, so let me turn to the process. So if you submit a piece of work to JSAS, what happens to it? You send it into our coordinating editor, Colin Stone, and then it disappears, and you don't see it again for probably 3 or 4 months. At a minimum, it can be 6 months until you hear back again. So what happens in that interim? The first thing Colin does is he allocates the article to an editor who usually has some kind of expertise in the area of that particular piece. Then the piece is circulated to the board, the JSAS board members, who volunteer to read it based on their own expertise. That's already a very unusual practice. So JSAS's papers are all read by the board itself, that is, it's an internally run process, whereas most journals will send the paper out to external readers, and they will draw on a much bigger pool than we draw on in terms of readers. We also don't, another unusual aspect of JSAS is that we don't anonymize the articles that we read. So your name will appear on the article that goes to the readers. Most journals do anonymize articles. And you can see that there's a different kind of logic to the two processes. The reason why we don't, and we've debated this at great length, I don't know if you were there, Joe, for our lengthy debates about whether or not to anonymize articles. But we decided not to in the end. And that's because we seek to actively promote the work of early career authors and scholars working in African universities. And to do that, we need to go to the authors. In aid of that, we keep the author's name on it. And JSAS is, the reason why we ended up justifying it in the end is because JSAS has been hugely successful in this regard. There was a comparison between JSAS and all of the other Africanist journals, and we published a much higher percentage of African scholars and early career scholars than any other journal. And that's what, it's something that we consider part of our mission, and it's something that we're very proud about and want to sustain. So keeping the identities of authors visible is in aid of that. Okay, so the readers get sent to you. The readers volunteer to read your article, they receive your article, they write a report on your article. That goes back to the editor. Then another odd thing happens in terms of normal journal practice, which is that the JSAS board meets quarterly. The entire board convenes and meets every quarter to discuss every single paper. So every single paper comes before the board and is discussed with the editor and the readers making their recommendations. And what comes out of that is a proposal. Usually there are kind of three major categories that can fall into. One is simply rejected. The second is to ask for a resubmission, which is a major reworking of the paper, usually in not exactly the same way. And the third and most common is revision. But revision is a broad category, so it can be very minor things or it can be quite major things. But nobody is simply published. Everyone revises to some extent. I mean, that's just absolutely standard. So what are the main stumbling blocks for articles that are submitted to JSAS? The most common is that it's simply inappropriate for the journal. So if we get an article in that has a lot of economics, mathematical equations in it, we just reject it because our readership can't understand that. Not a lot of economists read JSAS. So that wouldn't be for us. So we would simply reject it. The other big category is what I'm going to call variations on the theme of narrowness. That may mean a very thin empirical base. So you just basically, there isn't much research in it. It's just kind of pontificating about something without a lot of evidence. The other shape that takes is that there is no engagement with the wider academic literature. So it's purely empirical. So, it may have something new to say about a particular thing, but that doesn't tell us about anything broader that is relevant to academic debates. And both of those are a kind of test of significance. So you want to pass muster in JSAS, you have to both satisfy people who are real experts in the field you're writing about. And there usually is on the board someone who knows quite a lot about the topic. But you also need to write something that's of interest to people who have absolutely no interest in the case study you're writing about. So if I don't care at all about what's going on in the Congo, of course I care deeply about in the Congo, but if I didn't care at all about it, I should still be interested in this article. It's got to make a bigger claim, a bigger contribution to an academic debate or academic literature. So often those are the two areas where people fall short. But saying that, it's also often a question of extent, and that's where the requests for revision come in. So this is often a negotiable thing. So people are very aware that you you just may need to read some more literature. You may need to be referred to a bunch of articles which you for some reason haven't referred to, which address directly the things you're talking about. So that's where revisions come in. Or you may be asked to strengthen the empirical side of your research. So the editors and the readers are trying to help you strengthen your article when they write back to you. And it can be extremely horrible to receive readers' reports that are critical. I tend to sort of go hide somewhere for a couple of weeks after I get readers' reports to recover, and then be able to address them with a positive attitude. It's very hard to receive criticism. Everybody suffers in the face of it, but they are intended to be constructive. They are intended to make your work better in the end. So they should be taken in that kind of spirit. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to Gerald to talk about the mentoring program, and then to Miles, and then we'll just open out for questions.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Well, before I talk about the early career mentoring program, I need to just say a few words about the times we are living in. Basically, this is the age of the vanity press and predatory journalism. The kind of people who advertise and even offer to pay you to publish with them. And naturally, it's easy to publish anything, anyway now. But the benchmark that really gives you the sense of being the academic that you ought to be, or that is respected, is publishing in and peer-reviewed and reference journals, of which Journal of Southern African Studies is one such journal with the profile, the history that stretches back to 1977, and that is built up quite a huge contingent of scholars. So naturally, it's important that you take up the decision to publish seriously, so that you don't just publish anyway and for the sake of publishing. The other point about the context we are living in, especially in Africa, is that, and in Zimbabwe in particular, is that academia has become naturally the biggest employer given the economy. Everybody, you can look at the statistics, ends up at some institution, or trying to get affiliated to some institution of higher learning. And one of the requirements, obviously, is the publications. And in this case, often, it's the number of publications that you have. Yet, at the professional level, it's important to have the respect in your discipline. And like Joseph just said, the Journal of Southern African Studies is multidisciplinary. Therefore, it is a pool of experts from different disciplines who are likely to give you very, very informed advice on the nature of your submissions and also, shape your career prospects. For me, I think I joined the advisory board less than a year ago. And what I have seen through the processes that Joe talked about, sometimes, especially from the submissions that come from this end of the continent, is that you find quite a lot of papers trying to reproduce sometimes copies of dissertations or structures of dissertations, so that you find a very good topic starts with, say, theoretical framework or methodology. It's so structured to the extent that it doesn't engage or it doesn't flow in the natural process of telling the story that you want to really sell to the editors. I get the feeling quite often that some submissions actually make it a burden for the editors to know what you intend to share or what you intend to say in your paper. And like Josh was saying, nobody really cares the micro issues, about the micro issues that you'll be dealing with, but it's about how you speak to the rest of the community of the journal and its readership. So it's important before you even submit to think about your audience, and more importantly to comply with the requirements. This is something that she didn't mention, but the citation process itself is important because it tells us how serious you are in your submission. So it's not about conformity, but dealing with the standards that are expected, so that people don't pay attention to those little details about where you put your comma or your brackets or how you punctuate the entire citation system, but that they focus on the content, which gets me to the next point. Research and submissions can be either of the three critical areas. They can be theory-driven, they can be method-driven, or they can be outright empirical. So it's important for you to demonstrate right from the beginning what your submission is all about, so that even if it can be all of these three things that I've mentioned, it's about how you bring these things together to make a meaningful, properly abstracted submission. That's why even sometimes the abstract itself is important. And maybe at some stage we might talk about the formulas of coming up with proper abstracts and how to showcase and sell your ideas and advertise what you are selling without boring anybody or without wasting time. And it's also important to know that with the JSS system, it's automated. So some of the things will reject you right at the beginning of the technological stage, or the technological phase, where you fail to conform to simple technology issues, because at the time you submit through the online system, which is now, and it has several requirements that I think we should also talk about, so that we don't fail our submissions at the technical level. Then the other thing that I thought I could mention deals with the decisions. Decisions are reached on the basis of the recommendations of the reviewers. And even when the paper gets back to you for revisions, the decisions will then be taken by whether to take you or to reject your article on the basis of the majority of the decision makers and what they recommend. So I think that's what I would just add to the material that just talked about. And then I'll move on to the JSS Early Careers Mentorship Program. This is a program that was mooted a while back, and it was rolled into action this year. And most of you might have seen the adverts, and I'm aware that some of you will be coming to the first workshop in Malawi. But a bit of background to this, which has to do with what I think perhaps this workshop wants to engage with. It has been seen over the years that while the Journal of Southern African Studies is a regional journal, it has been getting lots of very good papers by Africa-based scholars or scholars from Africa who are mostly outside the continent. And although it gets some from within the continent, some of them are very poor quality. And often it has been questioned what it is that actually drives this kind of picture, but quite critically, what can be done to level the playing field in terms of getting as much submissions from Southern Africa as possible. And in the recent past, obviously, speaking of Zimbabwe in particular, a lot of PhDs have come through, and there's a lot of academic action, as I said in my introduction. And it's about getting these young emerging scholars to publish in the journal, but also to help them produce high quality material that can go into the journal. There are several advantages for those that are outside, but also they are limited. There are lots of limits inside Africa or Southern Africa and Zimbabwe in particular, with respect to facilities, for reading, mentorship, and indeed some of the problems that we face with our institutions in Zimbabwe. For instance, with respect to the expansion of the university system, which I must say has emphasized more numbers rather than quality. Access to resources that will help some of us here to get to conferences or to get support in the form of fellowships that would otherwise actually sharpen and hone your skills in the area of writing and publishing. So the JSS board has made available funds to assist the process of getting a number of promising young scholars together and pair them with mentors over a period of a year or something to that effect, and make sure that not only do they get the submissions, but that these submissions are properly primed for submission. And this is going to be a process that rolls over continuously. The first workshop, as I said, will be in Malawi, and already the successful applicants have been paired with their mentors, and it will be the job of the mentors to assist the candidates over a space of time to submit proper and high quality material, and this will remain the candidate's work. It is not co-authorship, it's not it's not patronage, but it's about identifying those areas of weaknesses, those areas of strength that could be perfected, so that we don't only achieve a high number of local submissions, but also get high quality submissions at the end. So this is the purpose of the early career mentorship program. It's made up of a core group of GSS advisors in Southern Africa who constitute the board, the local board. But it will be on a rolling basis. The first workshop is in Malawi, the second one is going to be in Lesotho, Swaziland, Botswana, and then I think the other one will come to Zimbabwe. It is hoped by the time the budget is expended, quite a number of scholars will not only have had access to mentorship, even if they don't make it into the journal, but they also have published. So it's not only about getting to publish in the JSS. That's the debate that has been there. And naturally, we have invited other journal editors and board members to come and participate, so that if they like some papers, we can also encourage them to submit, or they can do their own work in terms of attracting those submissions to their journals. So participating in this process is not only about JSS, although there was a huge debate why JSS should fund for other journals, but we also felt that it's important, if it's about mentorship, it's important to also expose Africa-based scholars to other high-impact journals. And in the Malawi workshop, I think we'll be having review of African political economy, African Studies Review has expressed interest, the Journal of African History will be represented. So it's going to be a platform that allows, that covers up for all those limitations that Africa-based scholars have, so that you can also have a one-on-one with the journals of different, editors of different journals. But more importantly, it's for us at GSS to actually attract, as much as possible, and maybe in the context of the politics of academia, tip the edge in favor of local submissions, but without compromising quality. I think I'll end with that.
Great. I think the first thing I'll say is it's important when you write an article to try your ideas out on others before you submit it. So get feedback from critical peers. Present at conferences first. Those kinds of processes are really helpful in getting your paper in shape before publication. But also, just to reinforce Johnson's point, it's when you do submit, be really careful about the fit. So every journal on the website will be an aims and scopes little tab. Just to read carefully and see if the kind of work you're thinking about submitting actually fits the research interest. Another thing I wanted to add also is about rejections. Those are very demoralizing. I've had my fair share of rejections too. We all get them, but don't give up. Never give up. And the thing about rejection is, even if it's rejected, you're getting a hell of a lot of feedback. Go away, use that feedback to get your paper, make your paper better, and send it somewhere else. And that somewhere else may be equally strong journal or the one right second best. So it's tough to take, but still give it. And the other thing I also want to say is, I'm just my experience with love the craft. It's one thing to high impact factor, a lot of numbers, the programs or the journal has to try to be a professor. But let's not forget about just loving the craft too. The sheer joy of going out doing research, you come back and you craft something really new and interesting. So let's not lose that too. Love for the craft. And then I'll point out another thing. When you do publish, it's also because I talked about loving the craft, but make sure you circulate your ideas as well. So with JSAS, once you publish, we give you this link, and I think it's 50 or 100. People can download the article for free. So send it to journalists, people like that who can probably maybe write a story in the newspaper, so that creates a buzz around your work. Rely on Twitter, Facebook, circulate your ideas, get your ideas out. That's how you can influence or shape discussion. Then another thing to touch on what Gerald had to say, this is mentorship at JSAS. I'm on the mentorship scheme for African Affairs. So we have two, I think I've done 4, and eventually one of them actually got published by African Affairs. So African Affairs is another outlet for that. And the last thing I would say, I just want to briefly refer to some work, a piece by Ryan Briggs and Scott Weathers in African Affairs 2016. They looked at publishing trends from 1993 to 2013. And what they found is that the number of articles written by Africa-based authors has declined in that period. That's exactly what Gerald was saying. But what's interesting is while there's been that decline, the number of articles by women has risen remarkably. And so it's just a shout out to the young women academics aspiring. It's academia is changing. Once was male dominated, but doing very important strides. But so that should encourage you to feel confident about putting your work out there. So and then the other thing I want to add for a point to this article. While that is the case, also is that right? Africa-based scholars are also still cited less than the Western ones. That's something that comes up. But again, not women. So not another progress. But also to note that Africa-based authors are more likely to write about a smaller number of countries. They never generalize. to talk about Africa in very expansive terms. That's often a habit of the so-called Western scholars. And Africa-based scholars often do not write about economics or conflict. Your Western-based scholars, the ones who focus on economics or conflict. These are all politics. So I think that the significance of all this is it's shaping the nature or the diversity of particular discipline of politics and the state of the knowledge what we know. So I think, or the reason I'm bringing this up is Africa-based scholars maybe is really scope because we do such different things, really fine, detailed work to contribute to that diversity. So work from Africa is much needed. Okay, okay.
Thank you. Basically, the three speakers highlighted the reason why most of the publications are rejected. I think you will for yourself. And inappropriate papers, narrow themes, and perhaps lack of this speaking to the large audience, lack of that in paper. So it doesn't attract the attention the paper might deserve. Secondly, you also have a talk on how decisions are made in publication of a particular paper, the work of decision making on whether your paper should be published or not. I also have a talk on the early mentorship program by Mazaria. You yourself and a number of students who have applied for that. And I will work with them be successful in the application and be able to attend the scholar mentor program. I think that you are very right. Never give up. Often give up. And you get nasty comments. I know this is that. The first time I think I actually had my comment from the SS that were written almost 2000 when I first published my sometimes we get discouraged by mention of the comments. Keep it aside and perhaps try it again and revisit the comments and see if you can do something about it and respond in a manner which you don't want. So never give up a strong message from 20 miles. And then I also spoke of circulating the ideas as widely as possible so that people get more interested in the work and they're participating in particular. And also, I'm interested in the recent findings, which I mentioned are quite interesting. But one would wonder exactly how the coverage of that study, how wide was it, and what kind of journals were involved. We tend to have sometimes we assemble list of journals and leave that picture. So we won't get a total picture of what's happening. Okay. Any questions, any comments yes.
Yeah. I can just shout from you. Thank you for that enlightening session. Can I take you back, Professor Mazaret, to what you said about abstracts? I've heard claims that Africa-based scholars, put in very poor abstracts, and sometimes papers are thrown away, at that very first level. Wow. Can you just take us through some of the ideas that you could equip us with? Because really, if your paper is thrown away at abstract level, surely we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go, and those are the basics of the publishing.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My issue is with a situation where the FC have mounted the paper and they send it to JSS. Then JSS makes a lot of important work by assessing the paper and make it very important and critical suggestions but how to improve it. And then there's sometimes they then tell you not to bring it back to them. Doing more that way. Wonder, the moment you move it to another zone, there's their own expectations. So I don't know whether it is this policy or what is really the position when work is being done. Positions are there, but then they don't need the paper anymore.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Well, I don't want to turn this into a methodology workshop, but it's rare though that just the abstract is treated, especially when you submit to a journal. It's usually the full paper. And in some of the submissions that we did see for the early career mentorship program, some people made the mistake of just submitting the abstract, not the full paper, in order to demonstrate how ready is your readiness for submission. But maybe because you asked that question, I should just give you my idea of the format of a good abstract. It's very simple. It's usually background, context, and main point. It allows you to sell the idea right away, whether you are dealing with, as I said earlier on, an empirical issue, a theoretical one, or perhaps even a methodological one. So indeed, I agree with you. The abstract is important, and it should sell. But it's also important that you highlight at an early stage through such a formula. There can be many, but this is the basic one, which is not the only one. That allows you to give a sense to the reader what to expect. It's supposed to be like your tag or your advert of how much you are worth. And I think people should be able to say we are buying you on at that stage.
I think actually writing abstracts is a bit of an art. And I mean, for the purposes of journals, as Joel's saying, you're submitting the entire paper. So it's not going to be judged just on the abstract. But when we circulate for readers in JSF, it's the abstract that gets circulated. So it is significant in that regard because it will attract or repel, readers on the basis of what you put in there. But yeah, it's always hard to summarize a longer piece in a paragraph. But I think Joel's exactly right. You want to provide something of the context, but also then really tell us why this matters. Why should we care? What is the significance of this paper? And that's about getting to your findings. It's not like this is the question I'm posing. It's like, what are you actually telling us? So that has to be summarized in that abstract. And I'm really not saying this is easy to do. It's actually very hard to do. But if you want to catch someone's attention, that's your chance to do it, definitely. And it will also, in our case, make sure you get readers who really are interested in what you've actually written about. Definitely don't cut the first paragraph of your paper and put it as the abstract, which a lot of people do at the same time, I think. But yeah, it will just annoy your readers if you do that. So put some hard work into getting the abstract an effective piece of communication. On the recommending you send your paper to another journal, I'm trying to think of a case of that with JSF, and I read a paper not that long ago that was very narrowly focused on debates in agrarian economics. And I think it probably has something interesting to say about those debates, but those are not debates that our readers are interested in. It's technical, a technical set of debates, and it was using concepts which are very specific to a particular field, which we don't really engage. So, my feedback was, this may be very interesting. I actually am not sure because I'm not qualified to read it, and nor are our readers. So you want to be sending this to someone who's going to be fascinated by it and really want to interact with it, and that's not JSF. So I said it should go to a journal of agrarian economics. of which there are many. So that's again like who is in your footnotes? This entire article, all the footnotes were other journals of agrarian economics. So that was the audience for them. So I mean that's just one example. So I'm sure there's lots of different variations on this, but it was a clear case of sending it to the wrong journal in that instance.
It's just a point on abstracts. Look, often when I write, I'm not very disciplined in terms of sticking to what I think to say. Also, have to say other things as well. And then what should be journal article 8,000 words winds up in 15. So what I often do when I write articles is to just get the abstract right first before actually getting into the meat. You draft some ideas, but this is what I want to say, and this is the important. And just really something I know is manageable within say 8,000 words, and then that then disciplines what I actually say after. I just stick to that. So the abstracts can work in different ways, but for me that's the discipline tool. So getting them right is quite clear.
At what point do you decide to have a special issue feature? Of course, when what makes you make a decision? Any other points?
What I'm going to say, it's not about me because I published the ASAS. But I often hear people say, oh, well, the thing with the ASAS is that when you take a copy, there are people you can always guess that they put an article in there. And so there's this thinking that there are people that the ASAS seem to give preference. These are people that are publishing online propaganda in there, and then there are short some that are then cut out, and I think it connects with what you are saying. So I want to find out, what could be the response to that sort of thinking which is out there. It's not
I'm going to take the question about special issues. The other one. No, I mean there's a kind of connection between them. Yeah, special issues almost always emerge out of conferences that are supported by business. So almost every single special issue will come out of that process. And those are usually initiated by board members. So I'll go to my colleague Miles Narmer and I'll say, you know what, we really should do a conference in this area because there's a lot of new scholars working in there. I've encountered a bunch of PhD students who are interested in this. And the debate is new and it's exciting. Let's try and be at the forefront of that. Actually, an example is the one that I edited with Miles and Joan McGregor recently on the transnational connections of liberation movements, in which Gerald had a piece as well. And that really came out of a whole lot of new research which started to be done based on, for example, the East German archives. There were new archival sources, there were new oral historical sources that were beginning to cross boundaries that hadn't been crossed before in thinking about the histories of liberation movements. A lot of young scholars were doing that work, so a lot of them were just finishing their PhDs or on postdocs. So we brought together a bigger group of people, and then we selected the papers out of that collection. And I think we produced a really interesting article, a collection of articles in the end that pushed the debate around those questions forward. And that's kind of the purpose of the special issue. It's to really interrogate a particular theme that is raising new questions and breaking new ground. So they're the kind of things that people will take up as an initiative and push forward. And it's a huge amount of work to do, I should say. Organizing a conference and then editing all the papers, something that will take a year out of your life. Fairly intensive, both networking and editing and raising funds to do it and all the rest of it. So you don't take it on lightly, but that's how it works. So sometimes those special issues are about creating community, sometimes they're about reflecting community, and that may look like there's a kind of in-group at work, which is maybe getting to the second question a little bit, that we tend to live within communities of scholars, and we draw on those because we know about them, and we have to make a big effort to get outside that. And that's partly done through, for example, having a big call for papers for your conference. So you find scholars that you weren't aware of before who are working on that particular issue. So you try to open out the doors as far as you possibly can at that stage. But inevitably you have your patch that you know very, very well, and you tend to return to it to some extent. So I described the process as outside that, assessing papers. And I think it is a fair paper process. So I would be loath to see that as the place where try to open up the door. But I'm aware to be
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a connection between the special issues and networks and in some cases even mentorship. The fact that board members in JSS, like in there's an editor of critical studies now. The fact that board members get together and try and also push their own research priorities, or in fact build networks around certain or common research priorities within a particular cohort of editors makes it easy for them to extend networks roughly around common interests. And naturally, this brings about special issues. And if you look at it, special issues are not as consistent as normal issues because they are not counted in the volume. Is that am I correct? Special issues. They take up, but the rest of the other submissions are in the 6 issue. They are not counted. So special issues and special people they take up just a fraction of that process because it is a requirement that a special issue comes. And if you look at what other issues then you came up with a special issue that was based, for instance, on my interest in Sandra Swamp's work. And we built a cohort of people who didn't even know, who expressed an interest in working on animals. And we ended up coming up with a special issue. I know I'm now sitting on more than 4 special issues of for instance, where you can tell that Mark or is pushing this agenda because it is the core group. And over and above, the advisory, input. Sometimes it is the core themes that make up conferences, themes that make up special issues are even identified by board members. So that's what might explain these themes that make up themes that make up special issues. But I must also make mention one thing that I sort of missed the Vice Chancellor's the deans. But I must also special issues are perhaps slightly higher quality than editing. In the recent past, we've seen friends gathering under the tree and they're putting papers together and rushing through the press and getting it published and so on. To the extent that, with all these promotion issues, with all these, issues that actually drive the academic in Southern Africa at the moment, we see a trend where the issue of vanity publishing is going out of hand. And I think it's important for us to really turn to the more rigorous process that the journals provide for the special issues. I might sound biased in that respect, but you can know, for instance, that a special issue will go through the rigorous process that a normal submission goes through. It's not only about the same people gathered together, but themselves also submitting, it's about them submitting themselves to the process that the standards of the journal require. And I think when calls for special issues or calls for conferences come, it's important for people to understand and make applications without necessarily bending backwards to fit the conference call. That's another disadvantage and actually disturbing thing that I've seen, where even in the submissions you see somebody submitting a whole dissertation or even forgetting to remove that part where it says partial submission, partial fulfillment. We see that coming, and you can tell somebody's just lazy to submit something properly, and they are bending backwards to fit into a conference. If it's a conference on the soil, and it's a presentation on the bears, they want somebody bears with soil. And it's I don't know, I might be digressing, but these are the
special people can do. The one thing for Jason, so when the reviews reports come in, everything is still laid out to the entire board. The one thing for 30 people from all over. Okay, so any chance of anyone trying to, ensure that certain people are or to obstruct other people from coming together, I think it's quite limited because it's a very transparent process. And this is not a criticism of journals, but it's just to say that it's a real plus of journals. Whereas other journals, it's just two editors who decide, are we publishing this or not? Our JSAS is really this. So I think actually JSAS is more transparent. Whereas I hope that was truly different.
Jesus, it's not to be couch or
Thank you very much. My question probably is also a bit related to what Professor Mazari was saying about the rigorous processes and now what is happening of late where he says some people are just gathering under a tree, gathering some hastily written paper, before you know it, it's a book. Maybe I should also highlight that we are working. Academics are working under a lot of pressure, this publish or perish, kind of regime where people are under pressure to apply for, promotions, tenure, and so on. It all depends on publications, as you said. Maybe I've also heard some colleagues complaining that sometimes you submit a paper. Obviously, sometimes at the back of your mind, you've got promotion or something that you want to achieve. Besides, in addition to the usual reasons for publishing, the paper goes on 3 years down the line. The paper is not published, or something is not yet out. So I wanted to ask, maybe with regards to GSS, just give us a timeline from the point when one makes a submission to the time when we actually have a published article, because people are increasingly under pressure to actually get paper published. Thank you.
the time when we actually held an outreach actively, because people are increasingly under pressure.
Just out of curiosity, of course you mentioned that the process of getting your paper published is so rigorous, in some cases it's so demoralizing. I was wondering, is it possible for one to submit another paper while he or she is in that process of demoralization? So that you have two papers, being submitted to the journalists. So that you have two papers.
Just being responsible in terms of success in publication. And I can submit this year, next year, another year, and then 5 publications come in the group. And so I'm appearing every year.
I'm aware of that.
Let me interrupt you on the time span question. JSS has struggled with that, and we for many years had a very long backlog of articles that were just in a queue waiting to be made. And we decided at some point that the queue wasn't fair on all of us. And I think we were up to something like 2 years from submission to publication. And that's part of the reason we did some 4 issues, 3 and 6 issues a year. So we're trying to get things out quicker. And I think we're closer to a year now than 2 years. But it does depend on, because we discuss every paper in the board meeting. So if you submit a paper immediately after we've just had a board meeting, then we're not even going to discuss the paper for another 2 months. So that can increase the delay. And then sometimes readers don't read immediately. The editor has to chase them a few times. You submit a report comes in, that can add another delay. And then of course the revision process, partly because people are demoralized by the comments. I literally have to put an article away for a while before I can go back to it, because I'm not emotionally strong enough, emotionally, robust enough to actually face the process of revision. So, in fact, I had a paper that I sat in the drawer for about 5 years. Comments. So, I think, then it depends on, then you control that. How fast you revise. But that, that's also subject to all the other pressures of being effective, as usual. But I mean, JSS has worked very hard to try to reduce that time span. I think for most journals, it's a year plus. So if you're planning to want something out next year, you got to get it in. JSS has worked very hard to try to and then publishing people multiple times in the same journal, JSS does do that. So we don't have editing bar. It's not usual for people to submit 2 articles at the same time, certainly. That would be very unusual. So that I wouldn't recommend it. And anyway, you'd want to publish in more than one journal. Why would you publish all of them? If you wanted to use other leaderships. But we have, because we play a particular role, I think, in Southern African scholarship, people do come back to us. But there tends to be a gap. One thing we may narrow that gap is if you're in specialist or something, then you come back. Because we play a particular role. But yeah, it's not, we don't bar people do something.
Jason doesn't do this as much as others, but he said we're looking at least a year before it comes out. But a lot of other journals do this online first, I think. Yeah, so your paper can be online. Long before it actually comes out the paper. So yeah, they are quite good. concerted moves to cutting out.
Yeah, so your paper can yeah, long before it's
I briefly just wanted to get back to a comment that Miles made, and also sort of in relation to something that Josh said. Miles, I think you pointed out very sort of accurately that Africa-based scholars, say writing on politics, do tend to focus more on particular general, are less likely to make large claims about Africa as a whole. And yet at the same time, trends in major journals gravitate towards speaking about Africa as an entity and trying to shape a kind of, I guess, a sort of epistemological agenda in which it is legitimate to look at Africa as a bloc. And that, of course, jars with then perhaps the model that people within African universities are working with and how they understand and how we understand our kind of social and political world. And at the same time, of course, to get published, you do need to be making larger claims. So I guess, which is the point that Josh made, that you don't want to be so finely empirical that it's difficult to make clear why this should be relevant to a broader readership. And so I guess the question is both who and how do we understand the norms around what is a suitable broader claim? Because I think that one doesn't really want to play or participate in a game in which we keep perpetuating ideas about Africa as a generality, but at the same time we want our work to have a wider readership. Because I think that one doesn't really want to play.
So I was just wondering about the other side of the readers for journal articles. Now I know the JSS board has general days and everything, but do you have any sense of how many scholars within African universities are asked to read papers from other journals, either regional journals? And that's more a question perhaps for the scholars versus Daisy here. Because as I know, it's another pressure to read a paper and to review it, but it does teach you a lot about the process as a scholar, I find. So I'm just curious how many opportunities to engage with that side of the process there are on the side. Because I know it's another pressure to read a paper, but it does teach you a lot about the process. I'm just curious how many opportunities to
Yeah, I was conscious of Miles offering almost as a critique the idea that African scholars aren't making great comparative claims or writing about Africa as a whole. And I don't think that's Miles' point, but it's maybe an unfair point, and it's maybe a science critique. So political science values that big end, they call it, kind of comparative methodology, whereas historians do not. So maybe I'm generalizing, but again, social historians, political science don't value big end comparisons. That's not kind of game methodology. Certainly not. That does not mean you can't make points about significance. The idea that you need to make a big comparative case, or you need to draw huge generalizations about all of Africa, that doesn't make your point significant. Those points are utterly trivial, or absolutely misleading, or problematic in a positive way. So when I say something has to be significant, it has to address a wider debate. That debate may be any kind of debate. It doesn't have to imply pretty generality or some kind of point. You can enter into very intense debates about the nature of the state, the nature of the law. There's engaging with scholars from South Asia or a whole range of other things. It doesn't have to be about saying in Africa, across these 6 countries. So these are methodological and theoretical approaches that lead you in different directions. But certainly from the point of view of JSON, it's not a political science journal in the same way that African Affairs is, and it values different things. So generalizations about Africa would be considered exceedingly problematic by the vast majority of the board on JSON would meet with a strict set of criticism, and certainly from my point of view. But yeah, so I mean, I absolutely take your point, and generally it's something that needs to be unpacked and think about. And I wonder about, this this community is thinking about an idea that is the criticism that the African scholars write about more local context. I suspect there's a kind of comparative advantage involved in that. African scholars can write about local questions with an incredible level of sophistication and richness of evidence because they're based in these countries and because they have linguistic skills and because they have extraordinarily deep knowledge and context of the question they're asking. It's offered almost as a critique, whereas they make it could be turned on its head. But with that, you have to be engaged in other scholars as well. So there has to be that broader engagement. It's offered almost
That's something to take a step to his questions. And it goes back to the issue of special I think in terms of dealing with special issues, we must contend with the idea of the critical mass of ideas that begins usually with the board, but it's not necessarily confined to the board. So it is possible that a group of scholars, here or anyway, come up with a proposal for a special issue. And they can become guest editors of the board, but it's not necessarily do that in cases to do it. That studies as well. That we get people who are not even on the board editing the whole special issue. And the point that that's pushing that you are not debarred from actually coming up with an idea to a special issue. People who are not on the board. India are not debarred from coming up with any number of special issues. So if you really want to appear at times, whatever the case might be, you have the latitude. So it's not just about the people inside or the court or the cows, but it's a meeting process which you can actually participate in directly. Because it's all about identifying critical mass, and so it's not just about gathering around the common theme and making it viable and receivable. People must have to the reference process. Because it's all about identifying critical mass, and so it's not just gathering around the common theme and making it viable and receivable. People must have to
maybe from JSAT, but also other journals that you're on the board as well, and speak a little bit about open access publishing and how that's changing.
I think one thing about Zimbabwe and the library systems here is that they are very much part of the open access system. And I'm not really qualified to talk about the managing facilities, but I know in our library systems here pays for a lot of journals, which are accessible as long as you are logged into the system when you get certified by the system. I've been involved in Aluka, and one of our drives was to make JSTOR in particular and the products that we uploaded there available for free to any access to any what pin number or whatever that is identifiable with Africa, or that is from Africa, to get that free. And now with the online system, some of the rights are pretty straightforward, including even, like Joss was whispering to me just now, the fact that you can publish ahead and they have your article available online and even accessible to at least 100 people way before the print version of the journal is actually available. You can put that on your CV or print it out to your friends and share it. But in terms of access, I think one of the things that we are also doing in the workshop in Malawi, way before initially the research on the various countries in Southern Africa, as far as the access to the journals and how that can be improved. And the access regime itself how it can be improved and to what extent it disadvantages the African scholar. But as it stands right now, by the time we get to the workshop, there will be reports on the levels of access. And JSS, I think, has been going out of its way to actually identify institutions in Southern Africa that are not getting access to JSS and making it available and free, including physical copies. And JSS, I think, has been going out of its way to actually identify institutions in Southern Africa that are not getting access.
This is more.
JSS and making it available.
The institution of my guys, where the paper has been sent to the regulatory journal. Then you feel you want to retrieve your information. You feel the information is important. The paper is good in some way, but it is already all this way. We wish you want to retrieve it, because if it keeps there, then it's not useful. So what is the way where you feel you want to rescue?
You can't
assuming you would have done something
rescue me, trying to rescue. I'm one of those people caught up in a situation like that, where I think I started publishing when I was doing a master, just after the master, and I didn't know what. I mean, the talk of credible journals was very small. In fact, I remember celebrating, and trying to explain to my nephew what it meant, because during the crisis in 2008, when you come and celebrate, when he asked me, "Are celebrating a publication?" Trying to explain to me, "Do you get money from that?" I mean, people are thinking about food and bread and butter issues. They're coming with a paper to say you're publishing. In a little journal for that matter. I didn't understand. So I think I did publication in that direction. And even institutions are not even fast about where you place your publication. Then I put tenure. But if you bring them again, this time around, you won't feel great. But how I've dealt with it is to say, look, I still have potential in whom to publish. I mean, that has happened. It's now part of administration. I don't even worry or create my head about it. Perhaps the best that will happen is if I decide to come up with a book on because basically cannibalizing my master's thesis. That's why I wrote this publication. So I think one of the best that will happen is so if I'm going to do anything about it, probably a book, but that is based on an improvement on this is not the chapter. So I'm not going to do anything, but losing sleep, trying to rescue them is perhaps no longer, because I believe strongly that there is so much out there to research and write, and potential is so great that you can be chewing your head over what they gone through in the past. New research areas, new research projects, new collaborations, new what not what. The space is just too huge to worry about the video.
My question is one of participation, which was raised earlier. I think one of the ways to get published, start getting sometimes very difficult because when you're coming inside of because you know which books, which kind of books are out, and it's Jesus interested, which is book reviews. So I don't know what is Jesus because how do I know which books are out? Because I read the classes Jesus included I don't know what to write.
I know after you start this review, yes, these are every now and then, go to the website and see what new books you can read all the time. So what other do I know? I'm not sure about this.
I suspect Joseph is he approaches people to review them. There's also a possibility to approach him and say, I've seen there's 3 new books out on Zimbabwean politics, may I write a review article? And of course, a review article is far more valuable to you than a single book review because it counts as an article. So that's one possibility. But of course, you'd have to say, this is the kind of thing I want to do. Let's put some thought into it in advance. Book reviewing is very labor intensive too. I don't know anyone who hasn't sat with like a pile of books they've agreed to review on their desk for years, because the time you get to read a whole book, it almost never happens. So actually, book review editors are often very keen on doctoral students as reviewers because they actually write them, as opposed to those of us who are a bit long in the tooth. I've actually stopped reviewing books because of the guilt, it was too much. But yeah, so I think every journal does do policy, but almost journals, all journals will have a book review editor between you making to say, you have some ideas or a particular book you're interested in. And then as Pius says, AfOx review has this entire, categories of books that it lists, I think, every 3 issues. I wanted to, there's one other thing I thought just to mention, which is I get requests from scholars in Zimbabwean universities through ResearchGate quite frequently. And I'd be curious to know how often people use ResearchGate. Because it'll often be a request for a particular article, or I've actually put up full text versions of lots of articles on that site. It seems like quite an effective way to engage in scholarly exchanges where people's access to journal articles, or indeed often much more complicated book chapters, is limited in some way. So that's another route through which to connect with authors and to get access to published work.
It's also academia edu, but I think recently they've been asking you to pay.
Yes.
You want to see who is ready to it.
Yeah.
So that's getting pretty cool, yeah. But
yeah.
I know research groups. I think we put all our articles there, uploading. So we have 10 minutes before now we can use like 10 minutes.
I've got a comment. I I have to say that I enjoyed my experience when I was publishing research. You know, I received I received very useful comments, and I think in the end what determined the article to be published was the speed with which I incorporated the comments. So I noticed that the feedback, I think it came within reasonable time, 3 months. And then, of course, I took 6 months working on it, you know. And I remember my first experience when I got these comments. I was in Stellenbosch, so I went to this professor and said, you see what has been done for people? And they said, oh, you know, in this profession, what you need to do is to develop a very thick skin. And I think for those that will be submitting, you know, papers for the first time, you just need to know that there's no one who is special. So he also took me to his office and showed me comments on his paper and said, oh, yes, you know, I also received the same. So I think, I mean, as a word of encouragement to our postgraduate students, like it happens in academia that it's sometimes something that you think it's up there, where it is exposed to a wider audience. Some people may have comments on it and they may not think that it is of the right standard. It's never personal. Sometimes it's good to step back a bit and then come back to it and no longer emotional. So I think that's what I just wanted to say. So for me, at the end, after going through that process, I could feel that this paper is now much better. And such that when I go back to it, I ask myself, was this really me who? So I think that's all I can say.
Yeah, so sometimes when we sit down to write this article, you are unaware of some of this piece of literature. I mean, you are surprised when they tell you to read this piece of work in that piece of literature. You have those additional comments. And if you incorporate those comments into the paper, you produce a wonderful paper. That's normally happening. I'll give you all that day. And it's almost like thank you very much.
Okay, I think we are about 5 minutes ahead of time, but we are not going to take a break. I think we better move on. And so I'm going to we're going to move on to the next stage of our program. And in this particular case, we are looking at this ask myself all along, and I thought maybe I don't always answer. So I was trying moving when I see a few disaffected faces. Alright, it's okay. So we're going to break for lunch. Okay, I have just been informed that food lunch will be ready in the next 10 minutes, so don't be so disaffected. It's just a matter of 10 minutes. In the meantime, our musician has just gone out, but perhaps we could use these 10 minutes to network. If you've got further questions or some personal questions, those that you are afraid to ask, you know, in public, feeling that someone might feel they are stupid, do an answer. So it is the time to, you know, interact with someone and ask questions and so on. But after that, we are going to go for our lunch, and let's debate within the hour. Lunch will be served outside where we got our breakfast. So let's debate within the hour of, you know, from now on. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Wait a minute.